Subscribe to Rajshri Food and click on the bell icon for more updates.
Well, I've shown you a lot of dosa recipes in the past. Well, one more at that. But this one is called Benne Dosa, which is a classic or a specialty of Davangere in Karnataka. Well, as classic as a dosa recipe could get, these have just the same kind of ingredients. To begin with, it has Urad Dal. Well, Urad Dal is been washed well. This is split Urad. It's washed well, at least 2 to 3 changes of water, and then you soak it. While soaking, you just add in half a teaspoon of Fenugreek Seeds. Keep it overnight, and that's just perfect. Well, if you're making it in the morning, you can just keep it for 5 to 6 hours soaking, and then you can make the batter. Well, similarly, here I have rice. Rice is again washed in 2 to 3 changes of water and soaked for the equal amount of time. So if the Urad Dal is being kept for 5 hours, this can also be kept for 5 hours. Generally in our homes, what we do is we soak this and wash this in the morning, keep it through the evening, then we grind it just around 8-9 in the evening and then keep it covered overnight. Next morning, of course, the batter is ready to be converted into a dosa. So let's begin with that. This has been soaking for 5 to 6 hours. To begin with, I'm grinding Urad Dal and Fenugreek into a nice and smooth paste. Well, the whole idea of grinding this into a smooth paste, the trick here is to first grind it into a coarse powder-like mix, and then we start adding in the water as much as required only. Well, generally in olden times, this was of course made using a stone grinder. Times have changed, tides have changed. Now we all have moved to an electric grinder. Well, there is just a trick here, which if you understand, your dosa batter will kind of never go wrong. You need to judge the batter by sound. If you notice very clearly, when you begin grinding the batter, it sounds very grungy, it sounds very rough, as if it's just kind of hitting the blades. The moment you add in water, you'll realize that it all converts into a nice and smooth paste. And that's what you're looking at. And see how the sound changes. When the sound kind of becomes smoother, that's a sign that the Urad Dal is absolutely grind fine and ready. Here you can have a look. So here if you see, it's become nice and smooth, and that's exactly how we're looking at. Let's transfer all of this in a deeper bowl. It's absolutely important to have this nice and pasty because you do not want bits or grits of Urad Dal in your mouth. It has to be absolutely nice, lump-free and smooth. In the same blender, I'm also going to grind rice to a little coarser paste. Well, depending on the quantity, you can divide this into 2 to 3 batches. This one is a relatively smaller batch, so it's all getting ground at once. Let's quickly check on the consistency or the texture of the rice. Well, in this case, if you notice, it's a little gritty, but we need it a little finer than this. So just add in little water, not too much. Let it go right at the base so that it kind of starts churning right from the bottom. It's important to use your hands or your fingers rather while making the batter or while mixing the batter, because my grandmother said that it kind of adds in to the ferment. With this, our rice is also ground and ready. Let's transfer this in the Urad Dal mixture. Well, if you see, the batter is nice and smooth, but of course it has just a little grits and grains, just like semolina or rava. You can compare it to that closest. Next, let's move on to the third ingredient, and this one is poha or flattened puffed rice. Let's add this into the grinder straight. If you want, you can also soak this for just 10 minutes, but this kind of just works the same way. We also need to grind this initially a little coarse, then with some water into a smooth paste. Once this converts into a powder, coarse of course, something like this, I'm going to add in water and grind this into a smooth paste. Well, the whole idea of adding puffed rice is to ensure that the Benne Dosa becomes nice and fluffy and absolutely pillow-like. With this, your mixture is done and ready. It's absolutely porridge-like. and that's exactly how we're looking at. Well, the next step is to combine all the three batters till they are absolutely homogeneous and smooth. At this stage, you can add in half a cup of water to ensure that the thickness is just correct and the ferment is kind of easier. If you notice very clearly, for this kind of a recipe composition, I started of course with a jug full of water, and now I have some around 200 ml still in the jug. So roughly for this kind of a recipe, 800 ml of water in its entirety is just perfect. Well, the detailed recipe is in the description box below. Check that and get cracking. Mix all of this together. The next step is to cover this and keep it overnight covered in a nice and damp place, so that this kind of doubles up till tomorrow morning, and there you have the most amazing Benne Dosa batter done and ready. Well, this is one of my most favorite dosas, and the batter is generally always there in the home. So this is a ready batter which is fermented overnight. The next step is to season this. To season, of course, as simple as salt. Well, just a very quick tip for all of you who would struggle with getting a ferment right. Well, if you kind of try fermenting this batter around the winters where it's nice and cool and you do not find a warm and a damp place, all you need to do is keep a slice of an onion or half an onion on the batter the previous night, cover it. With the warmth that kind of develops, the batter turns out perfectly well fermented the next morning. So that's a tip for all of you out there. The next step is to whip the batter, and you'll realize that the air that's existing in the batter kind of just puffs out. So the next step is to also kind of incorporate that while mixing it right. You can do this with your hands, and trust me, that just works perfectly. But a spatula in today's times does no harm. Once the batter and the salt is kind of mixed well, the next step is to start making the Benne Dosa. Heat a pan on high flame, and you can cook this either in a non-stick or an iron griddle. I'm using an iron griddle. If you're not kind of confident of doing that, a non-stick just works fine. Once the pan heats up, I'm just going to add in a touch of oil, because this recipe, the hero rather of this recipe, is butter. Well, Benne Dosa, Benne means butter. Let's spread this all over, and once the pan is nice, hot and well seasoned, we'll start making the dosas. Well, just as a pre-preparatory stage, what I have done is cut butter into small cubes, and I've kept them in iced water. What happens is they kind of retain its shape, and that just kind of works beautifully for this recipe. While traditionally in a lot of Karnataki homes, they use white butter, and trust me, there's no replacement in the world to white butter. If you can lay your hands on that, please use that. Let's add in a generous dollop of this batter right in the center of the pan. Just kind of lightly spread it. It should not be very thin nor very thick. The moment you notice pores opening up on the dosa, we'll start adding in cubes of butter, because the beauty of a Benne Dosa actually lies in the butter. Just smear this on the surface of the dosa and give this a flip. After the flipping, you need to cook it minimum for 30 seconds, and after that, of course, it depends on the kind of doneness or crisp texture that you prefer. I like it a little softer. Soft and pillowy is my type, so I like it that way. So not more than 30 seconds, getting it onto the plate and giving it a fold. Similarly, let's start making in the other dosas. With this, our Benne Dosa is done and ready. Make this for your family and friends and thank me later. Try this with a variety of chutneys, or just eat it plain with a generous dollop of butter. On that note, do not forget to like and share the video and subscribe to Rajshri Food. Bye for now.